Welcome to, I think it's episode 5 of Mike's big Marshall folder exploration journey. Yeah, I'm having trouble keeping the episode order straight already. But a few episodes ago, we took a look at the Cold Steel Espada Large, the G10 version. And then we looked at the XL. But in those videos, I admitted, yes, I bought the cheaper models first. They are half the price or less, depending on where and when you buy them, as compared to the premium versions, because I wasn't sure if I was going to like them, carry them, use them. I figured I'd test drive these, and if I really like them, I'd go ahead and save up my money and get the premium versions. But I'd also made some assumptions based on that intent to carry them, that the G10 versions would be slimmer, flatter carry, and lighter than the premiums. And also, obviously, there were some optic issues. These don't have all the shiny metal bits to get maybe the wrong attention in the wrong places from the wrong people. But, okay, we all know how dangerous assumptions can be. And it turned out I really, really love this knife. So saved up my money, got the premium version. So here is our opportunity to compare them side by side. Did I get it right? What are the actual differences in specs between these knives? And while we're at it, we'll take a close look at this one, and I'll let you know if I feel like if it was worth the extra money. All right, let's get straight to the folded carry dimensions. How much difference is there really in the pocket between the G10 version and the premium version? Well, first we got to talk about the builds a little bit. G10 version has very slim flat scales with no reinforcing liners underneath. The only other reinforcement you're getting is the steel of the triad lock, and then there's a full aluminum backspacer for the rest of the length. And you got a blackened pocket clip, which we'll talk about later. Premium version. All right. We are upgrading to some polished micarta that is rounded on the sides, flat front to back. But I expected it to be a rounder, thicker, and it's actually pretty flat, pretty slim overall. Now the scales are pretty thin. However, underneath them you're getting some impressively thick, full aluminum liners. They're not drilled out at all. With some matching, well, you get the big aluminum bolsters on the top and then the smaller ones down here on the tip, and a shiny pocket clip. Fit and finish, by the way, is awesome. Very, very clean. I can find no flaws, gaps, shelves, anything in this build. But I'm going to say I was right about the optics issue. That for what's sticking out of your pocket, which is about that much, plus you got a shiny pocket clip on the premium version, at least with my wardrobe that is not all shiny silver, that this blends in a lot better than all of the shiny metal, which again might get you the wrong kind of attention. So there's that. What about the actual specifications? Well, a couple of dimensions I did expect to be the same, and they were. So overall length, yes, tip to tip is going to be 7 inches. 15.5 centimeters, which I've described as being about the biggest folder I can practically carry in a back pants pocket. Width at the widest point here, they are pretty pocket filling, 2¼ inches, 5.75 centimeters. But where I assume the biggest differences would be thickness and weight. Thickness of the G10 version, impressively slim at 13.5 millimeters. Premium version, 16 millimeters, which is actually slimmer than the similar size Voyager XLs with those sharp, uncomfortable pyramids all over the grip that rip up your pants. This is nice and smooth and comfy. But what about the weight? All right, so those Voyagers with the plastic scales and aluminum liners, those are an impressively light 7.5 ounces, whereas the similar size G10 Espada Large is 9.3 ounces, 264 grams. Premium version, 9.7 ounces, 275 grams. So, 13.5 millimeters versus 16. 9.3 ounces versus 9.7. Is that a significant difference in the pocket? I'm going to say no, not really. Comparing the blades. All right, identical specifications, but a big difference in quality and materials. Is it enough to justify the difference in the price? Well, how much are we talking about? I haven't been putting links in the descriptions recently because the prices on these flex a lot and frequently. But when I got the G10 version, I think I paid about $110 for it. I think I paid almost $250 for this one. So take that into account. Is it worth the money? All right. So specs that are identical: blade length 5.5 inches, 13.5 centimeters. Width at the broadest point is 1 5/8 inches, 4 centimeters. Thickness of stock exactly the same at 3.75 millimeters. You've both got, well, the geometry of the swept back, super keen but strong tipped clip points with the swedge on the back. Obviously it's not sharpened. You're talking about a folding knife. High flat saber grind with the sort of Emerson plates here, and we'll talk about how awesome that is for pocket deployment, but I also really like when I choke up, put my thumb on there for leverage. But, all right, so the G10 version comes with OS 10A, that my test files are saying somewhere above 60 HRC, with a stonewash finish, which a lot of it's actually sort of self-polished out with use, and it's stained a bit with some of the things I've done to it, but I think it's given it some character. And with all the things I've done with it, I've used it pretty rough. It's held up really well. I barely needed to refresh this edge. That said, though, S35VN. Test files are saying it's somewhere above 60 HRC, but the finish of the blade, I'm going to say, is much, much better. You've got a satin finish, very nicely polished, little bit of sign of fine brush marks on there, no tool marks, no flaws, very, very crisp lines throughout. Fit and finish as compared to the G10, I'm going to say is actually better. It's smoother in the action, and I feel like it's crisper, more Swiss watch-like in the lockup. Though this one has proven to be very tough, very durable, very reliable, this one just feels more refined. So there's that. Sharpness. Oh, absolutely. Shaving sharp out of the box. And I haven't put this to nearly as much use as I have the other one, but yeah, it's a super keen bellied clip point that just sailing through all sorts of, yeah, there's no problem using this, but okay. I have been a little delicate with it. Why? We talked about in the previous videos that I have kind of a curse around aluminum, that if I just carry something made out of aluminum, it's probably going to get mangled, even if I'm not doing anything with it. And I've been very ginger and careful with this one, carried it a little bit, used it from some stuff, and yeah, it's scratched up a bit. I'm hoping that's character and not damage in the final equation. But okay, this is where I would normally do my impact and durability tests. And I admit that I am a little bit nervous about potential. I don't think I'm going to damage this in terms of breaking it, harming it, causing it any failure. I'm thinking I might, however, cause it some cosmetic damage, and it's just so pretty. I really don't want to, but yeah, I'm going to do the things. So let me roll in the footage, and we'll see how it did, and then we'll talk about carry, handling, martial impressions. So how'd it do? Well, okay, the blade is just fine. As a matter of fact, the blade is fantastic. Hardness, durability, edge retention, geometry, all wonderful as expected. What wasn't expected was, well, pretty much all on the friendly end. In general handling, out of the box, I think the knife feels really good, at least in my hands. But under impact, stuff happened. Especially as compared to, yes, I tested it side by side with the G10 model. And the differences between these two under impact are profound. What am I talking about? Well, to sum it up, I'm going to say the premium version, especially as compared to the G10 version, this grip is very slippy, and there are some uncomfortable sharp corners and edges that your hand runs into because it's really slippy under impact. So starting with the first test, stabbing, thrusting into my pel, stab him, which is multiple layers of thick cardboard backed up by a couple of inches of compressed brown paper bag paper backed up by wood, forward grip, reverse grip, also flipped it edge towards me, North American Bowie style, tried choking down on it. Okay, the blade did fantastic, as expected. This geometry, tip penetration into the media, wound channel into the media, awesome. Pretty much just like this one. But, yeah, I was having trouble hanging on to it securely. It was slipping enough that my hand was running into some sharp corners. A little bit here, here if I was below this hook, and yeah, on the back. Sharp edges here, and yeah, around the cutout for the lock. I was feeling it. Was it discouragingly painful? No, but compared to the grippier and more comfortable G10 version, yeah, big difference. And those differences kept coming as we move forward, well, into the next test, which is potentially intentionally abusive. Hacking and slashing at different angles, forward and reverse grip into a piece of hard bamboo to see if I can induce a chip or a roll on a fragile edge. And as expected, the blade did great. No damage whatsoever, no diminishment of the edge, bit into that hard resistant media really impressively, maybe a little bit better than the AUS 10A version. But again, I started feeling that shifting in my grip under impact, and it was starting to ram some of those uncomfortable corners and edges into my hands. Wasn't terrible, but did not feel nearly as good as the G10 model doing the same thing. Then on to carving and shopping. All right, I have put this to cutting up packaging, cardboard, done a lot of food prep with it, but I hadn't really taken it out to do any significant carving or any chopping. And boy, was there a difference between these two. Steel, though, I'm going to say the S35VN is a little sharper and just feels like it penetrates wood to do carving and also packaging paper, stuff like that. A little bit better than the AUS 10A. Is it that significant? Well, it depends on how much you use it and what you use it for. But I could definitely tell the difference. But again, it came down to my grip on the thing. Now, choking up on it using that thumb plate is something I could press my thumb against for carving. That works great. But yeah, I just didn't feel like I had a good grip on this to do those sorts of things as compared to this one. And then getting into chopping. All right, it is a really impressive chopper, but yeah, feeling it kind of slip in my hand and then just feeling those different corners and edges kick that impact back into me. It's going to make me choose this one over this one. So I guess my bottom line here is collector's piece, showpiece, let's call it a barbecue knife, yeah. But for everyday, all-around, hard use EDC, I'm going to pick the cheaper one. Let's talk about carry and handling. All right, it's down to the extra unflattering wintertime waistline view to talk about pocket carry. And we got to talk about visual comparisons. The G10 version has pretty much been living in my back pocket. It's become my favorite large folding EDC. It's kind of the one to beat at this point. It's heavy enough that, yeah, it does pull my pocket down a bit, potentially making it more visible, but otherwise it blends in pretty well visually, at least for my fashion sense, and carries nice and flat. The G10 also has a nice balance of grippiness in pocket, so it's staying put, but it's not tearing up my pants going in and out. Moving it to the front pocket, yeah, slips in there really nicely, kind of again, disappears. Nice flat carry, not too heavy, and for me, I don't think it's too visible. What about the shiny version? All right, there are two issues, one of which obviously is the bling factor. It is a bit heavier and a bit thicker, but it's not really any thicker than the similar sized Voyagers. However, those are really rippy on the pocket, and this actually has, well, the opposite problem. So first of all, visually, all right, yeah, slipping into the pocket, it does pull the pocket down a little bit. I don't think it's too chunky, I don't think it's too heavy for me, but yeah, it is definitely more visible. Moving it to the front pocket, well, potentially even more so. But gets me to my second issue. The smoothness of the grips. I don't really feel like it's staying put securely in my pocket. I'm really afraid that moving around, sitting down, getting up, it might actually fall out. And that would be a tragedy considering how much I paid for the thing. So that makes me extra reluctant to carry it. Now deployment is just fine. In the back pocket I just do a little bit of a turn to catch that thumb plate. And again, I feel like the action and the lockup are just more refined than the G10 version. So yeah, I do notice it on deployment. Front pocket, yeah, the plate is facing the corner of the pocket. Easy deployment. But, okay, it's not the weight, it's not the thickness. For me, it's, well, the visual factor, and I'm afraid this is going to fall out of my pocket. I'm going to be two-fisting it during our Marshall handling discussion, because even though these knives are really similar, in certain ways pretty much identical, design, specs, geometry, in hand, I'm feeling a substantial difference between the two. And we already talked about under impact and for certain other utility uses that, yeah, this one is a slippier grip, and I'm feeling those sharp corners more because of it. And maybe it's that, or maybe it's those things combined with something else that's happening for me in Marshall handling that's, forgive me while I struggle to find the right word for this. And I think I'm going to go with some variation of density. What am I talking about? Well, even though this one is slimmer and a bit lighter, it just feels more substantial, solid, denser, more secure in hand than this one does. This one, even though it's a bit thicker and a bit heavier, feels, well, kind of hollow in comparison. Less substantial. Now, if I only had this one, I probably wouldn't notice. This one doesn't feel bad in hand at all. But having them side by side and having this one longer, yeah, I'm noticing something profoundly different between the two. So how does that play into handling? So let's talk about how they function the same but feel differently. Based on design, specs, geometry, both of these knives have lots of possibilities for application. Refer back to the video I did on the G10 version. Yes, I can choke high up on both of them, press my thumbs on those thumb plates for leverage for close-in utility work, but for our Marshall discussion, I'm going to call this the high grip. Index finger in the top groove, which puts my hand right below the point of balance of both knives. So point of balance is pretty close on both of them. And this grip combined with the belly and tip geometry, yeah, gives me a lot of confidence for slashing, hewing cuts, chopping, and yeah, rocking it in my hand to do those extended quick snap cuts. That clip point comes around corners really nicely in stabbing, or it can get in line with my arm for straighter thrusting actions. And yeah, when I get it more in line with my arm, I get my thumb on the back saber grip style. Nice big flat space for that. But again, doesn't feel quite as secure. And I'm starting to feel corners as my hand slips around. So I feel like I need to just grip down on this one a lot harder, but it is still feels slippy even when I'm doing that as compared to this one. Now, doesn't have a sharpened back edge, but it's got enough of a hook on that clip point that I can make use of it in back cutting action. So that's there. In this higher grip, I can flip both of these blade towards me North American Bowie style to take advantage of that tip angle on target and how that blade cuts into target media during stabbing and thrusting this way. It does feel a little weird and awkward, but it doesn't feel terrible. So yes, you can use them this way. But again, this one just feels a little slicker and less friendly than this one, which it feels like it's gripping my hand back. Let me describe it that way. Now, choking down. In this grip, it's giving me actually an extra inch of functional blade reach over that 5.5-inch blade. But if I choke down to basically putting my pinky on the other side of this projection like it's a reverse sub-hilt, that's now giving me 2 inches of extra functional blade reach. It's also moving my hand further back away from the point of balance, which makes the blade feel, well, more present, more massive for cutting, chopping, slashing, snap cutting. But in this grip, yeah, I'm feeling those corners and I'm feeling more slippage. So that's an issue. Now, in that longer grip, do I have enough blade reach and presence to parry with? Well, not quite, but I do feel like I have enough to strike with the flats of both of these, Planazzo style strikes, or strike with the spines, the Kite interceptions, which are kind of like parries. Maybe I'll talk about those in future videos. So that's there. But again, this one just feels so much better than this one. What about reverse grip? Okay, we got to start by talking about transitions, and yeah, there's a whole lot of business going on down here with these Navaja-style hooks or horns that you could potentially use martially for hooking or striking with. Now, I don't think I'd like to slam that into any kind of hard target. I feel like I would chew it up. In terms of general durability, I'm going to say both of these are probably going to be structurally the same. But yes, I'm being a lot more careful with this one because I don't want to do cosmetic damage to it. And even though I'm using it very gingerly, it's starting to get scratched and scuffed up. So my aluminum curse is definitely in play. But yeah, I'm going to try to take it a lot easier with this one than this one that I'm not worried about taking any kind of cosmetic damage. But back to the topic of transitions. So since my stubby little fingers can't pinch flip this grip shape, the safe, sane choice would be to do it with 2 hands. But you guys know me, I'm going to default to finger twirls. Now, this slimmer, grippier grip, I feel better doing that. And I don't recommend doing it with any knife because it's not very safe or secure. It's my old bad habit. But it doesn't feel bad doing it with this one. It doesn't feel like it's going to fly out of my hand or anything. And getting into that reverse grip with both knives, settling into, well, I'm going to call it the higher grip here, depending on your perspective. Yeah, I've got a good grip on the thing. I've got good belly for slashing and a great hook on the stab. Now, I don't feel very good reversing the blade towards me, so I'm going to keep it facing away from me in that application. But again, this one just feels generally better and more secure than this one does. This one doesn't feel bad, but I definitely notice a difference here. And it gets more profound when I choke down. If I put my index finger above that projection, like a backwards sub-hilt, yeah, it gives me a little bit extra reach, which I don't really feel like I need in reverse grip applications. And yeah, I could put my thumb on the spacers for extra leverage there. But this just doesn't feel nearly as comfortable or secure as this one does. So, all right, hopefully that made some kind of sense. Bottom line, do I feel like this knife is worth the money? Well, I don't regret my purchase. I feel like I really needed to add it to the collection, and it's nice to have the side-by-side comparison, definitely. I feel like this is a much more refined product than this is. But for all of the reasons that we've discussed, which one is going to get carried with me and put to all of the potentially hard and abusive use? Well, obviously it's going to be this one. So if this one appeals to you, I'm not going to discourage you from buying one. But if you can't afford this and you can afford this, I'm going to say you're going to be perfectly happy with this. And if you can't afford this, I would recommend the next step down in price being an XL Voyager. You probably love that one. But let's get our conversation going. Already started a good conversation about Espadas, so if you happen to have both, let me know what your comparisons are. Or again, we can talk about other large folders, other large cold steels. I don't know which knife is coming next in the series yet. Yeah, it's probably going to be a big cold steel folder, so stay tuned for that. But until then, as always, thank you all so much for watching, liking the video, subscribing to the channel, following my journey, and I do hope to see you back for, well, whatever the next chapter is.